Man, you're gonna want to hear this because something really interesting just came out about the direction this team might be heading. It's one of those situations where, at first glance, it looks simple, but the more you look at it, the more it feels like there's a bigger plan behind everything. And honestly, if this actually plays out the way it's being projected, we could be looking at a pretty big shift in how this team is built moving forward. But first, tell me, do you believe we can win this season? If so, write in the comments, "I believe," "Go Seahawks," and be sure to click the like button. Now come with me, and I'll keep you well informed. The latest ESPN mock draft just dropped, and what stands out immediately for the Seattle Seahawks is how clearly this front office's priorities are starting to take shape as we get closer to the 2026 NFL Draft, especially when you see the names tied to this team across all three rounds. We're not talking about just one splashy pick here, we're talking about a complete vision, one that reflects roster needs, scheme fit, and the identity Mike Macdonald is building on both sides of the football. Let's start with the first-round selection, because this is where things get really interesting. The Seahawks are projected to take Mason Thomas, the edge rusher out of Oklahoma, and this is the kind of move that tells you everything about how Seattle views its current defensive situation. After Boy Mayfie's departure to the Cincinnati Bengals, there is a very real gap in the pass rush rotation, and instead of chasing a big-name free agent, the Seahawks appear ready to reload through the draft. Now, Thomas might not have the prototypical size that some teams obsess over, but turn on the tape and you immediately see why ESPN's top analysts are so high on him. This is a player who has consistently produced against top-tier competition in the SEC, which matters a lot more than inflated stats against weaker conferences. He's explosive off the edge, bends the corner with ease, and has that natural feel for getting to the quarterback that you simply cannot teach. There's also something to be said about his development under Brent Venables at Oklahoma, a system known for producing disciplined and aggressive defensive players. And here's where it fits perfectly for Seattle. Thomas wouldn't be forced into a save-the-defense role immediately. With Uchenna Nwosu still in the rotation, Thomas can come in, develop, and contribute situationally before eventually stepping into a larger role. That's exactly how you build sustainable success, by not rushing young talent, but still putting them in positions to impact games early. Moving into the second round, the Seahawks are projected to take Keontae Scott, a defensive back out of Miami, and this might be one of the most fascinating picks in the entire mock. Because if you've been paying attention to how Seattle is structuring its defense, you already know this isn't about traditional positions anymore. This is about versatility, adaptability, and creating mismatches. Scott embodies that philosophy perfectly. He's not just a corner, he's a defensive weapon. He can line up outside, slide into the slot, rotate into dime packages, and even play closer to the box when needed. That kind of flexibility is exactly what allows a defense to disguise coverages and confuse opposing quarterbacks. And let's not overlook his mentality. This is a player who actively seeks out contact, isn't afraid to tackle, and thrives on creating turnovers. When you pair that with what Seattle already has in the secondary, players like Devin Witherspoon and a hybrid nickel-chopper safety role already in place, you start to see the bigger picture. This defense isn't being built around rigid roles. It's being built around movement and unpredictability. Scott doesn't just fit into that system, he enhances it. Then we get to the third-round pick, and this is where Seahawks fans are really going to lean forward, because the name Mike Washington Jr. has been gaining serious traction. According to the mock, Seattle lands the Arkansas playmaker at pick 96, and this could end up being one of those selections people look back on as a steal. Washington is coming off a 1,000-yard season in the SEC, and he did it on a team that didn't exactly make life easy for him. That alone should tell you something about his talent level. But what really jumps out is his explosiveness. This is a true big play threat. Someone who can take a simple handoff and turn it into a 50-yard touchdown without needing perfect blocking. And when you look at the Seahawks' current backfield situation, the need becomes obvious. With Kenneth Walker no longer in the picture, Seattle has solid contributors, but not necessarily that home run hitter who can flip a game in a single play. Washington brings that element immediately. He's not the most patient runner. He's not going to dance behind the line like a Le'Veon Bell type, but what he does bring is instant acceleration and the ability to hit a hole and be gone before the defense can react. That kind of speed changes how defenses line up. It forces safeties to stay honest, opens up the passing game, and gives the offense a different dimension that it currently lacks. And getting that in the third round? That's the kind of value that can define a draft class. When you step back and look at all three picks together, there's a clear theme. High upside players who may be slightly overlooked by other teams, but fit exactly what Seattle is trying to build. These are not random selections. These are calculated moves that align with scheme, culture, and long-term vision. It's also worth noting that this mock assumes no trades, which makes the efficiency of these picks even more impressive, given Seattle only has 4 total selections to work with. And that's really the big takeaway here. This isn't just about adding talent, it's about maximizing every opportunity. The Seahawks are being projected to address a critical defensive need, add a versatile chess piece in the secondary, and inject explosiveness into the offense, all within 3 rounds. So now it comes down to you. If this is how the board falls and these are the names available, are you taking this exact draft class for the Seahawks, or is there a move here you would change? And when you really let this entire projection sink in, it starts to feel like this isn't just a solid draft. It's a statement about where the Seattle Seahawks are headed as a franchise under this current leadership. Because every single one of these selections reflects discipline. No panic moves, no reaching for hype, no forcing a pick just to fill a name on the board. This is calculated roster building. Take a closer look at the defensive side again, because that's where the identity shift is the most obvious. By potentially adding Mason Thomas and Keontae Scott in the first 2 rounds, Seattle wouldn't just be patching holes. They'd be redefining how this defense operates week to week. Thomas gives you that edge presence that can grow into a game wrecker, while Scott adds another layer of confusion for opposing offenses that already have to deal with players moving all over the formation. Imagine facing this unit on 3rd down. You don't know where pressure is coming from, you don't know which defensive back is dropping, blitzing, or rotating late. That's exactly the kind of chaos Mike Macdonald wants to create, and these picks lean directly into that philosophy. It's not about having stars at traditional positions, it's about having playmakers who can execute multiple roles at a high level. Now flip it over to the offensive side, because the addition of Mike Washington Jr. might quietly be the pick that changes the most for this team in 2026. Not because he's expected to carry the entire offense, but because of how his presence affects everyone else. When you have a back who can score from anywhere on the field, defenses are forced to adjust their spacing. Linebackers hesitate, safeties creep forward, and suddenly, passing lanes start to open up. That ripple effect is something Seattle has been missing. They've had solid backs, productive backs, dependable players, but that pure game-breaking speed hasn't consistently been there in the current group. Washington brings that immediately, and even if he starts as part of a rotation, it doesn't take many touches for a player like that to make a difference. There's also something else worth pointing out here that Seahawks fans should not overlook. All 3 of these players come from high-level programs and have been tested against serious competition. Mason Thomas in the SEC, Keontae Scott at Miami, Mike Washington Jr. producing in a tough conference environment. These are not developmental long shots. These are players who have already shown they can perform under pressure. And that matters when you're a team like Seattle that doesn't have a massive number of picks. You can't afford to miss. You need contributors. You need players who can step into a role and give you something right away, even if they're not immediate stars. This mock draft hits that balance extremely well. It also reinforces something we've been hearing more and more about this front office. They are comfortable trusting their evaluations over public perception. These are the kinds of players that might not dominate headlines leading up to the draft, but once they land in the right system, they outperform expectations. That's how you consistently stay competitive without needing top 5 picks every year. And if this class does come together anything like this projection, you're looking at a Seahawks team that becomes faster, more aggressive, and significantly more unpredictable on both sides of the ball. That's not just a good draft. That's a foundation for the next phase of this roster. So as we get closer and closer to draft night, keep these names in mind, because if this scenario plays out, it could end up being one of those classes we talk about for years as a turning point for the Seahawks. Make sure you're subscribed, drop a like if you're excited about this direction, and click the video on your screen right now because the latest Seahawks updates and breakdowns. You're only going to find them here first.